What's up, guys? Welcome back. We're just around the corner at the Dark Horse booth again, here with Dave Gaynor and Mike Laidlaw for the continuing coverage from Geek Centricity and Screen Bombs for New York Comic Con 2011. These guys have been working on the Dragon Age comic books. They've been slaving away. So why don't you guys tell us what role did you play in the preparation of the comic book and how that kind of interconnected with the actual game itself?
Well, my role as creative director for Dragon Age is basically to make sure all the games and ancillary products all fit together. They're part of one cohesive world, and essentially they're part of one vision. Once that's kind of handled, I pass it off to the master himself. Dave dives in and handles the specific story development. So really, he's the one who worked, tooth and bone on the comic itself.
That's true in a way. I mean, we talk and try to decide what is an appropriate tale for Dragon Age. I mean, just because a story is fantasy doesn't mean it fits with our world and with the rest of our the stories. I mean, we have the games, we have the novels, and ideally they should all tell a part of the world. They should add to the wealth of knowledge that we have out there, right? So yeah, so once we decide what kind of story is appropriate, then I would break it down further. I'm the lead writer for the series.
Okay. Right.
So when the idea came up, they asked me if I would be willing to work on the comic book. I said yes, absolutely. Who wouldn't? I'm the writer for the Dragon Age comic series. As opposed to, there's a scripter as well, Alex Freed. Alex Freed?
Yeah.
Freed. Yeah, he works for BioWare as well, but he's on the Old Republic. But he's worked with Dark Horse on the Old Republic comic books before. So he is the scripter. So he takes my story, breaks it down in panels, and it comes back to me, and it's a matter of us deciding like the voice of the characters and stuff. Because I mean, they're my characters. I wrote them with my team for the games, so it's important that they translate well to the two comics as well. But I mean, it's a collaborative process.
Was there any challenges in integrating it with the continuity of, like you said, the video game? You got now Felicia Days dropped the Dragon Age Redemption. There's a lot of stuff. You guys got a lot of transmedia stuff going on. It's funny that keeps coming up at the con. Like we keep talking to people, and there's more and more multimedia projects that are crossing over those boundaries. Is there a challenge for you guys in matching that continuity at any point?
Well, there's strategies you can use to mitigate the risk, as it were. What we do is we have kind of a central approval group that handles, between Dave, myself, our art director, Matt Goldman, the three of us really make sure that it all kind of meshes together. And what you do is you don't tell a story that kind of treads on the toes of another thing you've done. So if you have the character like the Grey Warden that's absolutely central to a lot of people's experience, they crafted them. And in one person's game, it could be a female elf. In another person's game, it could be a male dwarf. You don't want to write a story about it being a human, right? That's just really kind of being unfair to the player and pushing them away from the other stuff because it feels wrong. So our approach generally has been to look at supporting characters, the followers as we tend to call them, and make sure that we're telling their stories, expanding the lore in the world. It all dovetails very nicely off of the stuff you already know if you played the games, but it adds to it rather than kind of conflicting. There are some mild moments of conflict, maybe some characters are dead in certain versions, where you do have an established canon, and it's always unfortunate when you have any kind of, headbutting, but, you have to accept that, well, with so many variations in the game, there's going to be a little bit of mismatch.
A game's pretty unique in that it can be interactive. We can do a lot of different paths, like a novel or a comic book. We have to pick one, so sometimes something like canon is unavoidable, but we try to keep it to a minimum. But yeah, I think the what's most important when it comes to working with somebody like Dark Horse or anybody that's doing a Dragon Age story is that we're responsible for what Dragon Age is, because just because it's fantasy doesn't mean that all fantasy fits in it, right? So when we sit down with an outside group that will say that they come to us, they want to do a Dragon Age story, is that we have to figure out what that means, right? They have to work with us. The great part about Dark Horse is that they're excited to tell a Dragon Age story, and they know what it is because they're fans. That's what made it really, really quite easy.
That's really cool. You have a wealth of knowledge of a rich history with the Dragon Age world that's, like you keep saying, is very different from traditional high fantasy or something along those lines. So there's things that wouldn't necessarily fit.
Right.
So dealing with the unique IP of Dragon Age, you have the RPG, you have other things. What are some, it's been fun to do this because this is different, and what are some wow, this is a little bit difficult because, I think elves are this way or whatever, presuppositions you guys had coming in?
Well, I think the tricky part is always When people see fantasy, they tend to have a very Tolkien-esque view of how it's going to work. So it's not tricky to have things or characters that are different. Like our elves, for majority, are either roaming vagabonds who have no home and are really pissed off at the humans, or the ones who gave up and just live in ghettos tucked away. They're not the elves you tend to think of. So the tricky part is not making that, it's communicating that clearly and getting that across. One of our key strategies was to do the different origin stories in Dragon Age Origins, so you could actually play an elf from the city and see how that played out. So really making sure that people understand where the differences are and where the similarities are, and making sure those two are the same, so that really we have our own identity. That's really, for me, the key.
Yeah, keeping an identity is important. I mean, the risk that the longer you tell a story, especially in a genre like fantasy that means so many different things to different people, is that the more often you contradict that identity, you can end up watering it down into something that is ends up being generic, right? So it's important for us to strike out and keep Dragon Age something that is unique, and we have to maintain that across all the types of stories that we tell, whether it's in a comic book or a novel or whatever.
Yeah. So, last question, and this is probably the most vital thing, right? The two of you, individually, are stuck in a dungeon. What 3 things do you take, or people?
Well, I think the classic is you need to have someone who knows how to pick locks, because, you know, if you're stuck, you're stuck. My old school adventuring self insists on a 10-foot pole, because
Very wise.
that's how you find those traps and don't lose a limb.
I've been through the Tomb of Horrors, I understand.
It's all about the 10-foot pole, and then you can stick it into the Orb of Annihilation, right? Oh, wow, I've got a 9-foot pole. Oh, enough said. It's also great for punny jokes, if necessary, and good banter, I think, is key when you're stuck in a dungeon. And the final thing, I think, honestly, is just a damn sharp sword. Yeah.
Would you go Vorpal, or what do you...
No, it's too risky. You might end up taking someone you want to capture. That's not going to work.
That's wisdom. How about you?
I think I come from the Cthulhu school. I just want 3 people that are slower than I am.
Nice, excellent. I'm a big fan of the Cthulhu mythos, so that's great. Well, guys, thanks so much for taking your time to hang out with us. Guys, we're going to be here. We're going to keep it going. Stay tuned.